and welcome to So Easy. Here's our project for today. I've made an insulated lunch bag. It's kind of cute and you can use whatever fabrics that you like. I've done mine with an Insul Bright, so it's got a thermal lining in to keep your lunch either warm or cool. And I've made mine with a nice Mickey Mouse fabric. I've also made my husband a nice Star Wars one, so you can use great feature or character fabrics on something like this. If you want to make your husband one for take with him while he's fishing, that's great, or a camouflage one, or some kind of cartoon character that your kids will like, then it's perfect for that. So it's insulated, it's got a flat bottom on the bottom here, and as you can see you can use however many different fabrics that you want on it. So I've just used 2 on my outer and then I've used 1 more on the lining. It has a pocket at the front just here and opens and closes with Velcro on the flap. And then when you open, I've used a laminated fabric on the inside of my bag, so it's just easy to wipe clean afterwards if you want to. Actually, I made this laminated fabric with some iron-on vinyl, so you can either use pre-laminated or you can make your own with the vinyl, or you can just use a regular fabric and throw this in the washing machine if you want to. So it's got plenty of room inside for your lunch, or a couple of beers for your husband, some tins, an apple, whatever you want to take with you, and it's going to keep those nice and cool. And just a small carrying strap on the top if you want to use one. Okay, so let's get our materials ready and then we'll start to make one of these cute little lunch bags. To make your lunch bag you'll need some fabrics. I'm using 3, 2 for the outer and the binding and 1 for the lining. You'll also need 1.5 inches of Velcro. One of your fabrics for the lining, or even if the outer if you wanted, can be laminated fabric. If you're going to make your own, get some of this heat and bond iron-on vinyl. I'll show you how to use that. For insulating the bag, I'm using this Insul Bright needle punched insulated lining product. If you can't get that, you could always use a couple of layers of fusible fleece or just some quilt batting too, and that will insulate your bag a little bit. So if you can't get the Insul Bright, anything that will insulate will work too. So these are our materials. Let's get started. We'll cut out all of the pieces first and then we'll start to sew. So we're starting off nice and easy with the front pocket of our bag. Now the front pocket is optional. If you don't want to add that, you can just leave it out and assemble the rest as you like. In fact, if you want to, you can even add a similar pocket to the back of the bag too. So just bear that in mind, that's an optional extra if you want to do that. So you take your pocket piece and just turn 1/4 inch to the back and then turn 1/4 inch again so the raw edge is hidden, and top stitch along here so close to the fold so you get a nice neat edge. And then if you fold your fabric in half, find and mark the center piece. We now need to add our little bit of Velcro. Mine's cut a little bit off square, so let me correct that. There we go, that's a little bit better. And I'm just going to place that just down from the edge of the pocket just here. I'm using the soft fuzzy side on this side, so just center it up like that on your pocket piece and stitch around. And I suggest obviously you use a white thread. It's going to look a little bit better against the Velcro, unless of course you've got some black Velcro or something that matches, in which case use thread that matches your Velcro. Once the front pocket is completed, take your front panel, that's the part of the bag just here which is going to go behind the pocket. So take that one, match your front pocket up so that the raw edges at the bottom are even, and of course then you have a little gap up there for your pocket, and take the fabric for your base and place it right sides together. Mine's a solid so it doesn't really appear to have one side or another, and then we can just pin along this bottom edge, and we'll sew through all 3 layers along this bottom edge with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Once you've done that, press all of these seam allowances towards the base. So now I have the base of the bag and these are the front panels just here. This piece is going to be the back of the bag, so that will be the reverse here on mine. So if you have a print with a directional print, make sure that you're going to place it the right way up. So once it is sewn, this will become the top of the bag, so you put your print facing in that direction. So match the back right sides together with the base, just here, and we will pin and stitch those in place. And then again, once you've pinned and stitched, press both of these seam allowances towards the base of the bag. And lastly, the flap of the bag is now going to attach to our back panel. Again, right sides together. And remember, although I'm using solids here, you can use prints, you can use whatever you like. You can use however many fabrics you like, or you can just use one for the outer of your bag. Entirely up to you. So I'm now going to sew that one to here, and then once this seam is sewn, again a 1/2 inch seam allowance, I'm going to press both seam allowances towards the flap of the bag this time. Once your outer fabric panel is all sewn and pressed, it's time to cut yourself the insole bright, which is going to be the liner. We need it to be 1/2 inch smaller on all sides, because we don't want to catch this too much into our seam allowances, because we'll make them far too thick to be adding our binding on. So just cut your insole bright so that it's a 1/2 inch smaller all around. You'll notice up here that I've pieced a couple of pieces of mine together. I've already made several of these bags, and then when I came to make this final one for the video, I realised that I didn't have quite a long enough strip left. And the good thing is that you can place these two pieces, butt them up together and just zigzag over, and if you need to join a couple of pieces like I've done, that will be absolutely fine. So don't be afraid to do that. So once you've got all of these together, you need to just pop a few pins in place to make sure that the insole bright is going to stay exactly where we need it to on the fabric. So I'm just going to pop a few pins, and then we'll talk through about how we're going to sew to attach the insole bright to the outer part of the bag fabric. My insole bright is now pinned in place, and if we turn over, we've got some seams here on the fabric. So this is the base of our bag just here, and where we have the two seams and we press the seams allowances both towards the base of the bag, we're now going to sew through there. So on the inside of those seams, on the actual base of the bag itself, if you top stitch across here and top stitch across here, that's going to secure the insole bright at the bottom of the bag just here. And then also when we come up to the top, we pressed our seam allowances towards the flap of the bag. So again, top stitch across through here on the flap side of this seam, and again that will catch the insole bright. Now, one other option, once I'd done that, I also decided that I would just add a little bit of quilting here on the front. Now, of course, we have got a pocket here. So once you do that, if you take out the pins, and you can fold the pocket part back, and then if you want to just quilt a few lines here, again, that will hold the fabric against the insole bright and keep everything in place, stop things shifting around at all if you should throw the bag in the washing machine a bit later on. So I'm now going to go and sew my seams and secure everything in place, and then we'll come back and take another look. So this is what the panel looks like once the top stitching is sewn here, here and here. And you can see on the front panel here, excluding the pocket, I've just added a little bit of quilting behind the pocket to hold that insole bright in place. You could also do some on the back, or make a nice quilted flap, maybe with a crosshatch pattern or something up on the here, which will make the front of the bag. Or if you have a nice embroidery machine, putting some kind of logo or emblem or embroidery on the front of the flap would look nice too. So now we can just set this aside for now, and we're just going to create these side panels for the bag. In order to work on our side panels, we also need to have the lining pieces. So let's have a look next at how we can laminate that fabric if you don't already have some. If you already have a laminated fabric, or if you've decided just for your lining you're just going to use a plain fabric and not worry about the vinyl, then you can skip this step. But if you have some just regular quilting cotton, you want to make a laminated or wipe clean inside for your bag, then this is what you'll need. This is the Heat and Bond iron-on vinyl, and I've got my two side pieces here. For the time being, I've just left them as one, and this is my vinyl. I've cut this to slightly smaller. The vinyl is kind of sticky, a bit like if you've got an interfacing or something on the bottom of your iron, you don't want that. So therefore I'm just going to cut my vinyl piece just that tiny bit smaller than the fabric, so that I don't have any vinyl hanging out over the edges. Once the vinyl is cut, you can see it's got this shiny side, which is the vinyl, and it's got this paper side, and we just need to peel the two apart. It's normally pretty easy, start in one of the corners. There we go. And then this vinyl is just very slightly tacky, not very much, but just enough that it's going to hold it in place on the fabric. And you want to add the vinyl onto the right side of the fabric, because that will be the side that's out. That's the side that we want to protect. So just smooth that down, lie it on top, and it's just that little bit clingy. Okay, so now we can take this over to the ironing board, but you don't want to put your iron on top, straight on top of the vinyl, because it'll go, it's kind of nasty. So either use some kind of a applique pressing sheet, or you can just use the paper. So the shiny side of the paper sits back on top of the vinyl, and then you can put your iron safely down on top, and you use the iron without steam, and you just hold it in place on the places that you want to fuse for 8 seconds, and then when you take it away, your fabric is laminated. So I'll go over and do that now, and then we'll work more on the side panels. Once we have our fabric laminated and ready to go, it's time to work on the side panels of the bag. That's the panel that's going to go on this part of the bag just here. So you'll need your two outer fabric pieces, 2 pieces of Insulbright, and your 2 lining pieces. On the outer fabric, I've folded it and then marked a line down the centre just here. This is going to be our stitching line, so use an erasable fabric marker of some kind to mark a centre line top to bottom, and we'll face that face down. Our Insulbright is the exact same width as our side panels, but it's an inch shorter, so leave a 1/2 inch seam allowance top and bottom just to reduce a little bit of bulk. We're not going to have the Insulbright here. And then we'll take our lining fabric and we place that on the top and match up all of the raw edges so that we create a little sandwich, and we'll have all those raw edges even, and when we look at it, our fabrics will both be right sides out and our Insulbright will be in the centre there. So once you have your little sandwiches made up, you're going to take it over to the sewing machine and stitch through all layers through this centre line, and then also make sure everything is lined up on these outer edges, and just baste through all layers on these 2 outer seams. I'm just going to run a zigzag stitch down the outside of these 4 lines just to hold everything in place. We need now to add the binding that's going to go on the top of our side panel just here. It doesn't need to be bias binding, it can just be straight cut. So you just cut a straight piece of fabric which is 2 inches wide, and then fold it in half, a bit like you would do regular bias binding. Fold the edges into the centre and create your 4 layers of fabric, which you're just going to pop over the top of that raw edge, and then clip or pin them in place. There we go, I've got a few of my clips there. And then if you're a wizard at sewing on binding, maybe you're good with quilting or something like that, then by all means just sew on with a straight stitch from the front and catch the back. If you're not such a wizard like me, then make it easy on yourself and use a decorative stitch. Here I've used a 3-part zigzag stitch. You may or may not be able to see because obviously the fabric is quite dark, but the 3-part zigzag stitch looks quite decorative from the outside, and it always makes sure that it's going to catch the back too. So if you're in any doubt, use a zigzag stitch or a decorative stitch, and it does make sewing the binding on. So complete that now for both of your side panels, and once it's on, just trim the excess off so that the binding is the same width of the panel, and do that for both. Time now to sew the handle of our bag. I've sewn mine with quite a short handle, but obviously if you wanted to have a longer handle with yours, or an adjustable one, or leave the handle off, these are all options that you can pick for yourself. So mine has a standard 16-inch handle, and I've created it the same way you normally would for a handle. So I've just folded in a quarter of an inch on the raw ends, this side and the other end, folded in towards the centre and then folded again so that it's in quarters. And now I'll take this over to the sewing machine and just top stitch around these raw edges. Just for a tip, always make sure that you start on the edge which is open first of all, and then you'll get a much nicer finish. So I'll top stitch all the way around here, and then we'll have a look at adding it to the side panels on our bag. Now that our strap is sewn, we need to add it onto the side panels of the bag. So working on the outside, take a little ruler or a seam gauge. You have your centre guideline just here, so you'll line up the centre of the strap lined up with that centre guideline, and measure 2 inches down from the top of the binding just here, and put the bottom of the strap at around that 2-inch mark. That will do nicely, and then I can add a pin, and we need to sew this on with a reinforced square. So about 1 inch I'll do down the side, across the bottom, up the top here, and then sew through the diagonals too, just so that we sew that on with a reinforced square. And then I'll do exactly the same for the other side, making sure that the strap up there isn't twisted. Now, one thing about stitching, the outside of your bag may be a different colour to the inside of your bag, like mine. So if that's the case, then match your thread on the top to match the outside, and then obviously match your bobbin thread to match your lining, so these aren't too noticeable there on the inside. Okay, I'll do mine and then we'll move on. It's time now to create our lining piece, and we've already got the whole outer of our bag sewn. So if you just smooth that out on top of your lining, you can use that as a template. So I'm just going to draw around the outside and use this one, this outer fabric, to make sure I cut my lining fabric exactly the same shape and size. So I'll do that. Once I've got everything traced around and cut out, then I'm going to take it over to the ironing board and laminate it. So I've got that iron on vinyl, and I'm going to iron on the whole of the inside piece so that my lining has got this nice white clean finish. There we go. It's going to be nice and quick and easy to use this as a template. Sometimes easier than creating a whole new pattern piece and then finding that the two of them don't quite match up. So I'll cut mine and laminate it, and then we'll move on. Once your lining panel is ready, we need to just add our little piece of Velcro, because this is going to form the Velcro closure here on the inside of our bag. So I've measured down 1 inch from this top edge, just found the centre, and I'm just going to place the Velcro there and stitch that in place. So now it's time to make another sandwich. So I've got the outer fabric face down with the Insul Bright or your fusible fleece or whatever you're using here, and then my lining fabric goes on the top so that our right sides are both facing out. So the lining fabric, the right side is facing up, and the outer fabric, the right side is facing down. And then I'm just going to clip all the way around the edges to keep these pieces in place, and then take them over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to baste around the entire perimeter, so all the way around the outside with a zigzag stitch, and that will hold those two pieces together. Last couple of clips there. Okay, so everything should be lining up nice and flat. When you do that, just make sure on the outside that your pocket hasn't fallen back this way, that everything's nice and flat, and then you can zigzag those two pieces together around the outside. Now it's time to add some trim to the front of our bag. So this is our top front edge just here, and that's the same as we've got just here on this one. So we need to add a little bit of binding. It doesn't need to be bias again, we can just straight cut this binding. So I've cut some which is 2 inches wide, pressed it into quarters, and then again I'm going to make it easy on myself by using a nice wide decorative stitch on here, and that will hold that binding in place across the top. And once I've got it sewn, I'll just trim off these little bit of extra so that the binding is the same width as my piece of fabric there. Now that we have all of our pieces sewn, it's time for us to start assembling the bag. So we have our two side panels here, and if you turn over and have a look, this is the base of our bag just here, and I've made some little marks on the inside just here within the seam allowance. And then if I take one of my side panels, and I've cut out a 3/8 of an inch square from each of these four corners just here, and now this the bottom of this side panel here is going to match between these marks, on the base of the bag. So the side panel will line up exactly with our base on the other side. And I'll just put a couple of clips in there. And then if I turn round, and do exactly the same on the other side. I want to make sure that my handle isn't twisted, so I'm going to make sure that's straight first of all. Flop that one out the way, and I've again got my marks here which are equivalent to the base on the other side of the bag just there. And then I pin this in place too, and I'll take this over to the sewing machine and then just baste in place, so along the bottom here and along the bottom on this other side. And now where I have these cutouts here, this is our pivot point. So if you imagine that we're going to have a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance and this piece is going to stand up here, the 3/8 here will kind of fold in and become our side seam just here. And these two pieces up at the top will match. So I'm going to take those, put a pin or clip in there, and then just clip all the way down to the bottom. And these should fit nicely if all of your seam allowances and things are correct, but give them a little wiggle if they need to. If you really find that it's that this piece is too long, for example, if you undo the basting here, you can just trim off a little bit at the bottom, but it should be fine as long as your seam allowances and cutting has been accurate. So once you get down to the bottom here, when you have this little cutout, it actually makes quite a nice square just here. So when you sew down here, you'll be able to pivot at this point, and if we just do exactly the same over on this side now, we're going to pivot where we've got that cut out just here, and this now becomes the side. So if I pivot like that, this now meets the side on the other side of the bag like this. Again, I can clip in place. All the way up to the top. So that's my one side of the bag clipped in, and I'm now going to do exactly the same on the other. So I've got my base there. I'll start on this side, match those two pieces up at the top where we've got our binding, and pin, and again it should pivot nicely in that bottom corner, which it does. You see, if you just fold it to the inside a little bit, it should do it nicely. And then again over on this side. And what we want to aim for is to have some nice square corners at the bottom so that the base of our bag is nice and flat. And we should also find that our side seams all come out the same length, and so that our bag will sit nice and square when we're done. So once you've got all of your clips in place, you can just check that. You should be able to stand the bag up and see that these 2 points here, for example, are even. Everything's even up at the top just here. Everything looks square and your bag stands up nicely. And then if you just double check, your Velcro hopefully should be in the same place, in the right place. So just pop the handle over to the back, fold the side in, and just check that your Velcro meets down at the front, which it does. Okay, so far so good with our little bag. And now where we have all of these clips, we now need to just baste down the sides. We have the bottom here, this section already basted. So now exactly the same, you take a zigzag stitch and baste down these 4 seams here, here and here. And you'll find it, obviously what we're going to end up with is our seams will be on the outside of the bag. And then that's where we add our binding around to cover up those seams later on. So go ahead and baste those now in place, and then we'll have a look at adding our binding. It's time now for us to add our binding, and we actually only need one piece. We're going to start at this corner, follow all the way around. As we come up here, we go around the flat, go around this side, and we end up back here. So although it looks like it's several pieces, we actually only need one piece of binding. This time we do need bias cut binding because we are going around curves and corners. So the bias cut binding has a little bit of stretch to it, and I've cut mine 2 inches wide. I've also drawn myself a guideline, which is 3/8 of an inch from this first edge just here. And this is going to be our stitching line when we sew the binding on. So we're going to start up on this corner, I'm going to leave myself about an inch or so up at the top there, just to overlap and get a nice edge later on. And I'm going to use some clips just to clip this in place, and the edge of the binding is going to go even with those raw edges that we've got basted together here for the bag. And we need to work in small sections at a time, so I'm not going to go ahead and just pin the whole lot on straight away. So if you're very confident in working with binding, then maybe you're quite able to take this over to the sewing machine and stitch accurately down this line. If you're a little bit less confident or less experienced in sewing on your binding, then what I suggest is you hand baste first. So start here and you'll actually follow the binding all the way around and hand baste the whole thing in place. Or if you prefer, just do a section at a time, hand baste and then sew with the sewing machine. So I'm going to hand baste mine in small sections and then sew. When we get down to these bottom corners just here, you do need to turn a corner with the bias tape, but don't pull it tight, because this here is going to be our inside corner, so this is the smaller part, and when we fold to the outside it's going to need to be a little bit wider. So when you come here, don't pull it tight into these corners. Give yourself, a little bit of space just to get right down into the corner here, and sew right down on this one corner, on this one line, right down into the corner. Sink your needle down in here, and then if you lift up the presser foot you can pivot, and then you can go ahead and just fold the bias tape into the next corner, sew along the bottom, leave your needle down right in that corner down there, and then pivot up again, and then you'll be on a nice long straight section. Go up here around the curve and so on. So you get the idea. Do it carefully, hand baste if you need to, and that will be the first pass of the bias tape in place. So that's the first pass of our tape now sewn on. Hopefully you found that not too difficult. It can be a little bit difficult to get right down in these corners, but if you do have some difficulty, then sew down to the corner and back stitch, then rearrange all of your fabrics, sew across, back stitch, rearrange again, and then start again if you find it a little bit difficult down in the corners. That's what I do from time to time. So now that we've got the tape on for our first pass, we've got these raw edges up at the top here, and we've got our seams here which need to be covered. So you just fold the tape round, same as I've done on the flap here, so that it falls to the outside of the bag all the way around. And then to start up at the top just here, let me zoom in and I'll give you a closer view of how I'm going to start the tape. So I've got the raw edge up in this corner just here. I've got a little bit poking out, we don't need too much, just a little bit. And where we have the stitching line just here, I'm just going to fold the tape so that it follows that line just there. Fold it down over, so we've got a nice finished edge up at this point here, and the fold in the tape is now following the stitching line that we've got here from before. So let me just put a clip just here, and then with our tape all the way along here, if you fold the tape in half so that it folds up to the raw edge just here, then when you fold that over you get a nice neat straight line, and it's just going to cross this line of stitching that you've got here. So complete that. You can do it again, you can do it a section at a time if you want to, you don't have to do the whole thing at once. So fold the tape so that the raw edge matches the edge just here, and then fold that over so that it just overlaps the stitching line that you've got before. Same up at the top here, you're going to fold the raw edge in, put your clip, and then this top clip, just going to make sure that's nice and neatly folded up at the top, and you'll get a nice neat and finished edge up at this corner just here. So let me just show that again. This piece here folds down to the stitching line, this one folds in half and over. Okay, and then you can do it in small sections like you did before, or just pin the whole lot round if you want to in one go. And then we're going to hand sew. So if you're really expert at doing binding, maybe you don't need to, but I think you get a much nicer finish if you can just hand sew this in place now. So take your needle at an angle, take a little nip of fabric from the main part of the bag, then put the needle up through the very edge of the binding, pull tight, again down through the fabric, up and pull tight. Let me show you, I'll do a few stitches and I'll show you what that looks like. Let's see if I can show a quick close-up of how I hand stitch on that binding. So I've got my needle and thread. You can see the thread coming out just here. It's coming out on the top of the binding. And where the needle comes out, where the thread comes out, I'm going to put the needle in, down through exactly opposite it into the fabric of the bag, but not all the way through, just through obviously the top layer. And then I'm going to go at an angle and come out just on the edge of the binding over here. I pull that, it's caught in a clip, pull that closed. Same again, exactly where the thread comes out, just here. And I'm going to put my needle down opposite there, through the fabric, out at an angle so that it just comes out the very edge of the binding, over there. Pull it nice and tight, and so on. Again, the needle goes in exactly opposite where it's come out from the binding. Catch that first layer of fabric at an angle, out through the edge of the binding, and so on. And in fact, it goes fairly quickly once you get started. You can take reasonably large stitches, you don't have to take very, very small ones. And so just put on your favourite audiobook or some music, or sit in front of a film that you really like, and you can stitch this binding on in no time. And then that will be it, your bag will be finished. So now I'm going to turn it over to you to stitch on your bit of binding, and we'll just take a final look in a moment at my finished bag. There we go, my binding is now all sewn on, bits of fluff, and my lunch bag rather, is completed. So thank you very much for following along with me on this project. I hope you've enjoyed making the little lunch bag, and I hope to see you over at Sew So Easy again soon. Thanks for watching.